What is going on? Welcome back to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. I'm sitting down with the mastermind behind Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu, Jordan Preisinger. What is going on, man? Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, not too much. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to dive right in. This is something that we've been discussing a lot on the show. I just had Braulio Estema on the show a little while ago to talk about this. I'm trying to interview experts in Jiu-Jitsu and ask them this question because I feel like it doesn't get asked enough, man. But what do you feel are the principles of Jiu-Jitsu?
There's many. Yeah. I can just go over like the main kind of points. I guess the main thing is like inside position is super important to control your opponent's torso. So I think a problem that Jiu-Jitsu has is that inside position isn't defined very well. And I feel like I've done a good job defining it. So what inside position means is to be inside of your opponent's defense. And as a result, their offense is on the outside of your defense. So for example, like we have like layers of defense. So what that means is like, if your hand is out straight, that's your first layer of defense. If your elbow is in front, that's your second layer. And the same can be said with your legs. So like if your feet are in front of someone, that's more defensive than your knees. And same thing on the mat too. Like when you're standing, it's more defensive than being on your knees, but it's more offensive to be on your knees in a sense because you bring yourself closer to their torso because you want to control their torso, right? So if someone gets past your elbows, then to take an underhook or grab your head for a crossface, then they're going to take inside position. So that's really what it is. It's getting past the defense because you can't defend with anything past your elbows, your knees, or underneath your chin too. So if you think about it, right, we use our frames to defend. They keep people far away, and they stop them from getting close, right? So like if someone gets past your elbow, how are you going to defend with your bicep? It's going to be incredibly difficult, right? You use your hands again, your first layer, or your elbows and your forearm to stop them. So yeah, it's like you want to take control of the inside position. And what's really important too is to understand that you can control people's inside position with more than just your body. So like, for example, if I pin someone to the mat, then their body, their torso, their back is being controlled by the mat. And the goal always is to control people's torsos. So we think about passing, or we think about side control, mounts, north-south, or the backs. It's all chest to torso connection. So that's what we're trying to get. That's what the goal is if we're trying to get to a dominant position. So other than in like submissions, which are obviously dominant positions, but they're submissions. So yeah, the goal is to go chest to chest. So if you're passing and someone turns their back to you, you want to get your chest to their back. You want to take chest to back connection. So if they don't turn their back, then you want to go chest to chest connection. So I think that people don't really understand like the objectives in jiu-jitsu, what they are, and they kind of try to piece together techniques without having a full like understanding of like more simple of objectives. So that's what I really tried to clarify for people, like what the objectives are. So, and one example too is like when you're passing, like the sooner you can get chest to chest, the better. So for example, like body lock passing or smashed half guard passing, you go chest to chest first, because when you do pass the legs, you already have control of their upper body, and then you prevent scrambles, right? But if you do a Toriano pass, which are great, I love Toriano passes, I use them all the time, but you risk scramble because you don't have control of their upper body. You don't have, like, you need to transition your grips from their legs to controlling their torso and getting chest to torso connection. So if they turn away, you go chest to back. If they stay there, you go chest to chest, but you have to get grips first, because if you don't have grips, you can't control them. So you need to get inside position grips, which are, like underhooks, cross faces, all that kind of stuff. So I guess that's like, there's a couple more things. Yeah, that we go over. Like, you want to control the hips in jiu-jitsu, or the head, or both. Like, the more you can control, the better. So that's something people don't always realize either. So sorry, I feel like I'm talking really fast, but I'll keep going. But so another example is like, I showed a close guard pass on Instagram, and it was like you trap the arm behind the backs, and then you work towards getting past their legs, right? And some people that are uninformed, they're like, oh, it's not going to work, you're going to get triangles. But it's like, Well, yeah, you're going to get triangled if you don't prioritize controlling the hips. If you control the hips, then how are they going to get their hips over your shoulder, right? So when you understand you need to prioritize specific things like that, like controlling the hips, controlling the head, it makes your technique so much easier to do, because people, like, what techniques are just like grip sequences. So you do a sequence of one grip to another, and the whole time it's like a replacement system. So like you have to control them the whole time. But again, if you do the grip sequence correctly, it might not be enough if you don't prioritize controlling the hips or the head or both. And yeah, the same can be said from any position, right? If you go to headquarters, you put their leg in between yours to pass, but if you don't also pin their hips to the mat, they can move their hips and have mobility, and to be able to attack easier. Same thing with closed guard. I mean, both players need to control the hips, and if they're not controlling the hips, then yeah, they're going to get screwed. And yeah, and closed guard is an example of inside position too. So some people think that closed guard is not inside position; they think it's outside. So like Danaher, for example, and because he said that it's outside position, but I disagree, because it's control of the torso. It's within your. They're within your defense. They're on the inside of your defense. Because if you go elbow to knee like this, right, you keep people on the outside of your defense, right? If they get their legs to the inside controlling your torso, then they have inside position. And closed guard is an example of it's kind of equal amounts of inside position, because the top player is controlling the inside position past the bottom player's knees, the inside position of the legs. But the person on the bottom is controlling the inside position of the torso. So it's pretty even in that sense. So who's going to be in better position is going to be who has the inside position with their arms. So like if you're on the bottom and you take inside position, you control the inside space. You can do things like Kimuras and other attacks like arm bars too. But if the top player has inside position on the arms, then that's when they can start going for passes like knee in the butt, or that pass like where you pass the arm, and just a bunch of different stuff. And if you don't control the hips, again, then the top player can work towards passing, because they need to posture up to pass for a standing pass. They need to posture up for the knee in the butt. They need to turn their hips to the side to do that like Sao Paulo pass and stuff like that. So yeah, that's that's it. I'm out of breath.
I love it, man. And just to kind of introduce like a little allegory here, like in the Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi wrote that you can learn everything you need to learn about a greater battle if you just study the one soldier. And if you study just what that one soldier is doing and you magnify it out to everything else, you can start to understand the entire strategy of the whole thing that's happening in a, conflict that might have 1,000 people. And just to kind of talk about like what you were just saying, for me, it really reminded me of like, if you were going to lay siege to a castle, you have to get inside the castle, right? You have to get inside, especially the keep of the castle. Like once you get into the keep of the castle, you've effectively won the siege. I mean, I was never in a medieval siege personally, but I've read about them. And it seems like, again, like you have to find, like you said, you have to find that entry point into the defense, whether it's a castle you're attacking with 1,000 people, or if it's someone's closed guard that you're attacking just by yourself. Like the principles are the same. You have to break through the defense and establish that inside position where you're literally like inside their most, the part that they're trying to keep you out of, really. And I mean, it seems kind of obvious when you talk about it, but no one ever talks about it like this. No one ever just breaks it down for their students. I mean, I'd assume you do though, because you have this understanding. I'm really glad, because dude, when I started training jiu-jitsu, there was none of this. No one ever said like, hey, by the way, get on their inside position. This is what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, no one talks about it. And even now, it's like you can ask someone what inside position is. They can be telling you how great it is. And then you ask them to define it, and they kind of give a very ambiguous answer. And because it's crazy how such an important concept is like not very defined. So what I did was just figure it out myself, figured out the best definition for it. And, I've spent like so many like hours just thinking about all this stuff. And like for example, like I have my Jiu-Jitsu theory course and I'm still adding to it. And, I'm like working on a script for the next video, and I've been working on it for like 3 days, and not just like writing it, like I'm writing it, but I'm also just thinking about it constantly, just trying to poke holes in all of my theories and stuff like that, because like my biggest worry would always be if I'm wrong, and I don't want to be wrong ever if I'm going to sell someone or teach someone something, right? So like it's important for me to try to pick holes into these kind of things, and yeah, it's just a process of just clarifying everything and thinking about everything, and it's just like I've just spent like hundreds of hours just thinking about jiu-jitsu, way more than I should. But yeah, like, you know, all these things just apply to everything in jiu-jitsu. Like, you know, I think of like every position, and I think of, you know, how does this apply to that? And it all just makes sense if we just understand how the body works, because that's what jiu-jitsu is. It's really like how your body works in relation to another person's body. And people just teach techniques like, which are again are just grip sequences, and a lot of people don't even realize that they are grip sequences. So they try to remember all these different grip sequences, and it's important to, you know, do these things like half techniques, like do it. That's the how, but you also need to know the why. You need to know the actual, like, how your body works in relation to someone else's. So it's all the same stuff within all martial arts, and like striking too. Like you need to get in the inside. If someone has, you know, their guard for you know, like striking, you need to, you know, you can split the guard. You can go around the guard too, but when you go around the guard, you're going from the outside. You risk them going to the inside for a straight punch. So, you know, it's, I just love thinking about martial arts and doing martial arts, teaching martial arts. And yeah, it's led me to understanding it all better myself, because yeah, again, like you said, no one really teaches this stuff, and I never learned this stuff from anyone. Like I've been on my own. Like I started my gym as a blue belt when I've only been training 3.5 years. So I had to just do everything myself. I had to take it into my own hands, and you know, which has also helped me even get better, because I need, you know, I don't have anyone to rely on. I only have myself, and you know, like I've had to figure it out, and then I can share that with everyone. So yeah, really, yeah, I love talking about this stuff.
Me too, man. You should start a podcast or a YouTube channel about it. But dude, I just want to go a little bit deeper on this question. So let's say that you've got someone that you're working with, and they've got a pretty good understanding of the inside position, and maybe they're trying to get into that more advanced stage. You know, maybe they're not necessarily a beginner, but they feel like they're still missing some of these different fundamental principles, so to speak. So I guess what else would you help them understand to help them get to that, you know, maybe past the beginner stage and into becoming a little more advanced?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, one part of that would be to learn the hows, like learn specific techniques. That definitely helps. But other concepts that are extremely important, I would say this is the most important one, beyond inside position, is just understanding what your grips, like what your limbs can do. So, what your limbs do is they protect your torso and your neck. So, and your limbs to an extent, they protect themselves too, but what they do mostly, yeah, what's a really important concept to understand again is that your limbs protect you. So you need to be doing one of three things, or all of them simultaneously, which is you need to grip, or you need to frame, or you need to close space. So they all have different objectives. And if you're not doing one of those three things, then you're just you're not utilizing what you have available, because you use your limbs to protect yourself. They're what's available in your head too. So you need to use what's available, again, to grip, frame, or close space. So if you are unable to grip or frame to stop someone from attacking you, then you need to close space. So for example, like if someone's trying to get underneath your neck and you don't have your arms or your legs to help you, you need to, you know, close it off, bring your chin to your shoulder. Same thing if your back's taken. Just say you're in the straitjacket system and someone is attacking you, like your grips are, you can't grip or frame. Obviously you can't frame because you're facing away from them, and you can't grip because they have you in the straitjacket. So what else can you do? You have to close space, and which is a tough thing to do. It's kind of a last resort at times, but also it's the same thing with like the open elbow, right? Like when you have your elbow open, you're not closing space, and it creates opportunity for them to get in, right? So you need to always be doing, again, one of these three things or all of them simultaneously. And yeah, people don't realize that. They take grips or they do whatever, and they don't always utilize what's available, or do the smartest thing with their limbs to protect themselves and to attack. So there's so much beyond jiu-jitsu that you need to do that's just not taught. It's again, they just teach people teach techniques, but like you need to learn how to grapple. So yeah.
My coach a few months ago, he said something that really stuck to me. He was saying that jiu-jitsu is not about memorizing moves. It's about understanding how the human body works and how to take advantage of it. I was like, man, that is it. That is made so much sense to me. But I feel like you're right. They teach it almost backwards. They teach it like, oh, here's all these moves that you're going to understand, you're going to memorize. And it's impossible to memorize them all. Like today at class, one of my students, she came up to me beforehand and she was like, man, I always struggle to remember all the moves in between classes. And I told her, I was like, yeah, me too. Like, that's like, yes, like you can't memorize everything. Like it's just not how it works, but you've got to actually get on the mats and put it all together and develop a game, develop a style, so how do you help people do that? How do you help your students like go and understand how to actually implement a game, with all these different crazy moves that are out there? Again, maybe they can't remember most of them even, how do you help them focus on, here's what you actually need to learn. Here's what's actually going to make you better at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So anytime I teach technique, I always try to teach the concepts behind it, as I'm also teaching the grip sequence. So, always going over that, and also, telling everyone what priority is as I'm teaching the technique, like what this is the objective, this is a priority, and this is how we do it. Like this is what we can do to help us get there, and not always being like, you have to grip this way, you have to grip this way. It's like, no, you just need to prioritize this, and there's multiple ways to do it. So, this is especially the problem that like people try to, when they learn a technique or when it's taught, they try to do it exactly the way it's shown, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. But if there's multiple, routes to get you there, and if you only have one available because that's all you learned, it might be very difficult to pull it off in a live role when there's so many different variables. But if you understand the objectives, you can use other grips and other tools to get you there all the same. So but at the same time, if it is like you specifically need to take this grip, then I'll mention that too. But oftentimes it's not like that. There's like multiple ways to skin a cat, but there's like only so much like why behind stuff, and so much that you need to prioritize. So yeah, I think that jiu-jitsu is largely taught really backwards, where you only learn technique and you don't learn actually like the why. But I think people are coming around to that and changing that way more now. Like I see people talking all the time about how concepts really change their game, how much they're prioritizing concepts over techniques. And I think for a long time, like concepts were so almost like murky in the sense of like, I don't know, I heard it like I've like back in my day, like I've been training for 11 years now, and I just remember hearing these like concepts, and like even ones I think back now on, it's like a lot of it didn't even make sense. It just like people just wanted to sound like smart almost and just overcomplicate things. But if you can't simplify something, it means you don't understand it very well. So I just think for a long time like concepts were kind of bullshit, but now like these actually useful concepts are really coming out and really helping people.
Yeah, it's true. And if you read some of the older martial arts books, like the Book of Five Rings, or if you read the Art of War by Sun Tzu, that's all that they talk about is the concepts and the theory and the strategy behind warfare and combat. And I think that's what these old samurai masters or martial arts masters from, hundreds or thousands of years ago, that's what they seemed to focus on, was more that. And anytime that I've trained with, got to train with Helsing Gracie once, or my old judo teacher who was an 8th degree judo black belt, like they taught entirely in concepts. They almost never taught a technique. They would teach the theory. They would teach a concept like what you're saying. So I feel like it's that higher level that you're talking about,
Yeah, 100%. I think that's like so important and so many different things, definitely like combat and warfare too. But yeah, again, I think that the reason is just because I think jiu-jitsu has been poorly taught for a long time, and definitely it's improving big time. Like, and I'm not saying just like myself or anything like that. Like, there's just a lot of, I think instructors as a whole are just getting better at teaching jiu-jitsu. And yeah, I feel like when I started, it wasn't quite like that. It was just like, here's the technique of the day, and you just learn like so many different ones. Your mind is, oh my God, I can't remember all this. So yeah, I'm really glad that it's changing. People are getting better at teaching, and it makes sense. Jiu-jitsu is like a relatively newer sport. So it just takes time for it to develop. And people nowadays, I feel like are really, like when they're starting now or recently, they're really kind of like lucky, because it was just way harder to learn jiu-jitsu back in the day. Like even just like learning techniques online, like YouTube would have like, like Submissions 101 or like all these other like channels that were just not great. And now like there's so many great YouTubers out there and so much free content to learn from. Instructionals are way better. And just like the resources out there are just incredible. I think that, honestly, I think that it's just as valuable, if not more, to learn online than in person, because you can really pick and choose what you want to learn and deep dive into things like concepts. Because I think that it's easier to learn concepts online than it is in person, just because you can really see these things in like real roles or, more examples and stuff like that. So I think self-directed learning is it's just so crucial for anyone that wants to improve quickly. And that's what I always did, because I mean, again, like I didn't have an instructor. I haven't had an instructor since I was a blue belt. Like I've affiliated with someone else like since then to get my belts, but I just been on my own. So like I've been self-directed learning, and I think I'm proof that you can still get to a high level and be a black belt, like just by learning, like taking your own taking it into your own hands. And like even if you do have a school and you're on the position I was, you still have to do both. If you just do the technique of the day, you're not going to be able to learn everything you want to learn, because like it might be like a year before they touch on something that you specifically want to learn, because there's just so many techniques out there. It's just impossible to teach everything like all at once, So yeah, I think that anyone that wants to take jiu-jitsu seriously should obviously learn in their gym, and that's very important, but also learn online and take advantage of all the resources that are out there that weren't available for, like guys like us have been training a long time.
So I know that's a great segue, because I know you got a new course that you just put together on jiu-jitsu theory and on just, learning at home basically. And man, that's something that I get all the time. Like just the other day, I was hearing from one of my students. She was asking like, what can I do in between classes to get better at this thing? So that way I show up more prepared. So can you tell us a little bit more about your new course on jiu-jitsu theory and just break down some of the big takeaways that you want people to get from this?
Yeah, so like a lot of what I talked about in this podcast is in the theory course, but it's more fleshed out. You see real rolling examples, and it's just like a very, I guess, well put together package, so you can really just understand everything really well. And then there's also like positional kind of overviews where I bring I teach the concepts, but in specific situations, like mounts or side control and in the back, or like passing, sweeping, that kind of stuff. So, all the concepts are the same, but you need to see them in different, you need to see how they're applicable too. So I think that's where my theory course is like very unique, in the sense that it is just so concepts based, and you can use those concepts to make your own techniques better, but also just make like the in-between better, because this is something that's not really well understood either, that you can't only be doing techniques the whole time when you're grappling. There's like the in-between, like specific things you need to be doing, and only the techniques are taught for the most part, and the in-between isn't. So people get so confused, like, where do I grip? What do I do? And they need to learn that. And what it is you need to be gripping, framing, or closing space for the in-between, but then also you do that for the techniques. So yeah, that's really important. And I forget what else I was going to say, but yeah, that's it.
So I have one last question for you, man. I know we got to wrap this up, but I know like as you're teaching, whenever you teach jiu-jitsu, you always end up learning more about jiu-jitsu. Like whenever I'm trying to break down something in a lot of detail, I'm always like, oh yeah, I'm putting my foot there, huh? Like, you always are learning some new things. Like, what did you learn as you were putting together this course? Was there anything about jiu-jitsu theory that really kind of blew your mind that you learned while you were developing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that honestly, the theory courses made me a lot better, because, I really like delve deep into everything to find the absolute truths, and, and then I use it in my own game, because now like I'm thinking like, I can just relax in the in-between and just be framing and or closing space or gripping, whatever it is, and just, as long as I'm doing one of those three things effectively, I'm going to be okay. So, it's helped me like just kind of slow down almost, and and just understand everything better, because again, like, like it started kind of, it was a process. It was like trying to figure out what I'm trying to say and then put it into words that all make sense. And then the more I could do that, the more I kind of discovered and of simple truths, like, so like I made these like kind of like theories and concepts that like I didn't have before I even started. Like some I did, but then other ones like layers of defense, it just kind of came from like really understanding that, okay, that makes sense. defensively, we want to keep people far away. So you can do that with your hand by having it in front of them or your foot. That's going to keep them the most amount of distance away. And then the second amount would be your elbow or your knee or your shin and your forearm. And if they get past that, you can't keep them away anymore. So now they're past your defense, and that's not good. So, yeah, there's just so much, and it's helped me a lot. And I've had a lot of people tell me that that's helped them a lot, and that they're not getting tapped nearly as much. They're having success against people they didn't have success against before, because I mean, their techniques might be the same, but like their understanding of how the body works and jiu-jitsu itself has increased so much. So having that complete package just makes you better at jiu-jitsu, because you can't just have only techniques.
Man, that's so true. I feel like you're giving people the strategy, more so than the technique, which is everything, man. Like, that's the macro level stuff that doesn't ever get taught. And man, I know that you said before the interview that you're going to give our interviews our listeners a discount. Could you tell us where can people go if they want to snag that discount and if they want to get the course?
Yeah, they can go to JiuJitsuTheoryCourse.com and use discount code JJ Outlet for 10% off the course.
Dude, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And hey, if you're listening to this and you want to grab the new course, go check it out. I'm going to put the link below, and go definitely follow Jordan's YouTube channel. It's the very best one out there. And especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're just getting started, like his YouTube channel, it's literally made for you. So go check out Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going to put a link down below. And you also got a podcast, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know the podcast is a little more recent, right?
Yeah, I think we've been doing it about a year, but which is still pretty recent. But yeah, it's called Talk Jitsu, and it's just like a laid back kind of just a fun talk with my friends about jiu-jitsu and sometimes other stuff. But yeah, it's just a good time. We don't take ourselves too serious. We just we talk about techniques sometimes, talk about like recent stuff and ourselves too, and yeah, it's just a good time. So Talk Jitsu, make sure to check it out.
Dude, well, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate you, Jordan. Thanks, man, for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it too.
Dude, anytime.